womb? And what shall I advise you, O son of my vows? Verse 3, do not give your generative strength to women. And I looked up generative. This is amplified. I don't think it has that word in. It's got something else in there. I think it may just say strength. But it's implying you're reproducing. So don't give your strength to women, neither foreign wives in marriages of alliances or concubines, nor your ways to that which destroys kings. It's not for kings, O Lemuel. It's not for kings to drink wine, or for rulers to desire strong drink. I'm just going to go ahead and read on to verse 9. Otherwise they drink and forget the law and its decrees, and pervert the rights and justice of all the afflicted. Give strong drink as medicine to him who is ready to pass away, and wine to him whose life is bitter. Let him drink and forget his poverty, and no longer remember his trouble. Open your mouth for the mute, for the rights of all who are unfortunate and defenseless. Open your mouth, judge righteously, and administer justice for the afflicted and needy. Now, all of that is basically her saying to her son, trying to instruct him on how to be a proper king. And you would think a lot of that would be given, but somebody who's in rulership or leadership or in authority over other people, especially when it's a lot of people, needs to be a respectful person. And all of Proverbs has mentioned how to be respectful, how to be have high integrity, how to be excellent, and all that. And so basically that's what that was about. And then she mentioned the women because she goes on in verse 10 through 31, which is the one that we're most familiar with in Proverbs 31. She goes on to talk about what an excellent woman would be. So she's really encouraging him to be selectful on who he chooses for a wife, and choose carefully. These verses, wherever it's talking about a woman or a wife, can also be applied to the church, Jesus' bride. And so I'm not that good on talking about that part of it, so I will talk on it from the natural. But just keep in mind, when we're talking about a woman, or these verses 10 through 31 is showing how the church can be beneficial to Christ, and she's his bride. But if you're a young person, or even if you're not a young person, it's kind of nice to know. I like to use these verses as kind of a goal to see if I can accomplish some of the goodness that this woman had. And it gives. We all need a goal. You know, in scriptures it says without a vision people perish, and that can have several different meanings. Vision can be a goal. But either way you look at it, whether you're talking about a man or a woman, a man who is blessed with a woman who has all these qualities is truly blessed. And I have not met any woman that hits all of them. I have met a few women who lines up with a great deal of them. And so anyway, I don't think we should put ourselves down if we can't do everything that this virtuous woman can do, or this excellent woman. But I think it gives us, well, let's just put it this way. When I was, I'm retired now from, but where I retired from, one of the things that they told me when I was learning how to be a department manager is they said you have to constantly be on the outlook for areas of opportunity for improvement. And if you want to be successful, that's what you've got to do, which is a nice way of saying if there's something not working quite right, you need to change it. So that's basically what this is. Anyway, verse 10, instead of with this being amplified, it's worded different, and it is more wordy, so I hope you enjoy the wordiness. I do, but not everybody does. Okay, verse 10, an excellent woman, one who is spiritual, capable, intelligent, and virtuous. Who is he who can find her? Her value is more precious than jewels, and her worth is far above rubies or pearls. Now, I looked up the quality type rubies today are valued at approximately $1 million per carat, according to the internet. And a pearl is valued at anywhere from $300 to $1,500 a pearl, depending on several factors, and it didn't tell what factors they were. So precious jewels are worth thousands of money. So if a man ends up with a good wife, and if you strive to be a good wife, you are of most high value. Or if you have been a good wife, to your husband, you have been a good value. Anyway, this is not here to make us feel bad. It's to give us something to gauge ourselves with. Oh, yeah, at the beginning with Lemuel. Right, strange woman would destroy kings. That would be one that doesn't have high morals. They don't have the same beliefs you have. You know, they would not be a compliment to you. They would be a detriment to you. Right. Do you want to spray this and use this mic, and I'll use that other one? This is turning out. We're going to do what the Holy Spirit wants us to do. Whether we might have started out.
Well, and on 4 and 5, I've got down here that we are kings and priests in my column here. And so I think it's talking about all of us. We are kings and priests, so we're not supposed to give ourselves to strong drink too much, or, you know.
Well, it's kind of hard to keep a sound mind and your wits about you if you're affected by some kind of a chemical substance.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And then that way we wouldn't, our judgment would be not be perverted that way. Yeah, that's all I had to say, really, right now. Okay, share it. Oh, her mic. No, I turned it off.
It came apart.
Oh, it did.
Yeah. I forget there's one of these mics that all you have to do is look at it cross-eyed, so to speak, and it starts falling apart. So I got to take my fingers and help hold it on there, make sure it doesn't fall off. So, Dave, did you have anything else to add about the first 9 verses where it's good advice to the king from his mother? And it's good advice to us as Christians, as a church.
No.
Nope. You're good. Okay. All right. And we've already established that now this excellent woman, in starting in verse 10, is not at all like these strange women or concubines or whatever. And so when we get attached to somebody, we need to be careful who we choose to be attached to. And it will be worth more than all the riches that we can think of that we might want to have. We will be more valuable to God as a church, or to our spouse, whether you're a man or a woman, being virtuous, being of high morals. I mean, to me, it's talking about the woman because she's the helpmeet to the man. But to me, it's the beginning of it encouraged the man to be of high morals. Yeah. And it's not just when we're talking about, and not everybody's married either, but and some have been married and are widowed or whatever, and so it's not just talking about husband and wife exactly, but it's just Proverbs is full of examples and comparisons. So this excellent woman is a comparison to show us that how valuable doing things the right way can be, whether you're talking about the church unto God or you're talking about the individual Christian as a light of God, or whether you're talking about a young man who's looking for a woman and what he should look for in a woman. It all applies.
That verse 9 says, "Open thy mouth, judge righteously, and plead the cause of the poor and the needy." Well, when we're claiming to be a Christian, or we're claiming to be American citizens, or living in America, we're supposed to be free and whatever. Well, we're supposed to be an expression of this country, and this country is a Christian country, a Christian nation. So, as a Christian, you're supposed to express those values and not just be in name only.
That's
so
right.
When it says, plead the cause of the poor and the needy, well, we're supposed to stand up for righteousness. We're not supposed to just go along with whatever,
Right.
Go along to get along. We're not supposed to let things happen. We're supposed to be part of the solution.
Right, not a part of the problem. That's very good, Dave.
And strange women could be, too, a woman could be strange beliefs, systems in your mind, and all that. So
that's true.
Mm.
Yeah, usually if two people get married and one believes one way and one believes another, their marriage usually ends up ending, or they have so much strife throughout their marriage over that it's miserable. It's a miserable life for both of them. So it just doesn't work. And of course, we know God's way works. So
they're supposed to walk in agreement, and kind of hard when they're not believing the same way you are.
That's right. That's right.
It's better to have God first before you get married.
Amen.
Yeah.
God first will help you to make sure that you're in line with God's will before you walk down that aisle and say, "I do." Okay. Verse 11, "The heart of her husband trusts in her with secure confidence, and he will have no lack of gain." There's a lot in that right there. I mean, whatever she does, if she's a good woman and an excellent woman, one of the reasons why she's of such value is because she doesn't go out and spend all the money they have on frivolous stuff. She works hard. She does her fair share of work. They are a team as far as the provisions of the household. And he can trust in her. He didn't have to oversee her. I don't know if you all have had this experience, but when I was working, there were some people you could give them a task to do and leave them alone for 2 hours and they'd get the job done. You didn't have to stand like a babysitter over them. Then there was others that if you didn't check on them every few minutes, they disappeared and they didn't do their job, and you had to go round them up and get them back over there to do their job. And it happened on some of the ones I was acquainted with. It happened more often than not. And you can't get your job done if you're constantly babysitting the person you delegated a task to. And so he can trust his wife, if he has a good woman, just like Jesus can trust us to do the right thing and without him hovering over us, if we are as the virtuous woman, the excellent woman. And we won't be doing anything that would take away he won't have any lack of, he will have no lack of gain, meaning she's not going to cost him a bunch of money because she's not going to be frivolous. She's going to be wise. Verse 12, she comforts, encourages, and does him only good and not evil all the days of her life. You won't catch her sitting in a coffee shop with her girlfriends saying bad things about her husband. You won't catch her if they have sat down and decided to spend their money a certain way. You won't catch her out and about when his back is turned, spending the money in a different way and going against what they have agreed on. She will only do good and not evil to him. And she comforts and encourages him if he gets, if he is in a situation of any kind where he's down and out. She encourages him and she comforts him and does her best to lift him up, not to put him down. If he loses his job, she doesn't go chewing him out for losing the job. She encourages him that he can find a better one. God will provide. God will help. And verse 13, she looks for wool and flax and works with willing hands in delight. So, and 14, she is like the merchant ships, abounding with treasure. She brings her household's food from far away. So, she's good at working hard and making the most of her talents and her abilities and her resources. And she's frugal. She doesn't waste anything. Now, I don't know if that means that she goes as far as what I was told some people in other countries that are really, really hungry. But it could be, because I think I read in the Bible somewhere where there were the animals that they used to eat, they tried to use other parts for other things. They didn't, like a sheep, the meat for food and sacrifices back then, and the wool for making clothes and blankets and so on and so forth. They tried not to waste any of it. And I remember hearing history stories about the Indians were like that with the buffalo. They tried to use as much of every part of each buffalo they killed. They didn't go out there and just shoot them for fun. They didn't go out there and just shoot them to get a buffalo head on their wall. They honored the fact that God provided them food through that animal and the animal sacrificed its life for their life, because they ate the animal, and then they used the skins for rugs and blankets and covers and clothes and hats and shoes and whatever. So,
Verse 14, she could also be whatever she needs, and they don't have it in the city, she goes elsewhere.
right.
Or maybe the price is too high, so she goes to where there's a deal or something. Or if she can't, if they're out of something, and she doesn't want to come home with nothing, so she goes and seeks to get what she wants, whatever she needs. She is diligent.
Diligent and frugal, and that was very good. That was very good. Verse 15, she rises also while it is still night and gives food to her household and assigns tasks to her maids. Now, a great portion of the women that I know don't have their own personal maid, but we're talking about a king and who he has chosen. But at the same time, if there's anybody under you, it could be children even, she was a good delegator. She was a hard worker, so she didn't expect to do all work herself, but if there was somebody like a child or something that could do some of it, she delegated, and she got her jobs done. Verse 16, she considers a field before she buys or accepts it, expanding her business prudently. With her profits, she plants fruitful vines in her vineyard. So she's very thoughtful in what she purchases and how she's going to use it, and she tries to buy things that she can use to make things better in their home and their lives and the business and so forth. I get tickled when I read this because years ago I was part of a church group that didn't believe in women working outside the home. Well, they even included a woman having a business. Looks to me like she had a business within her home, and she worked just fine. And she wasn't stuck at home all the time either, because she went out and she found things that would make it better and more prosperous. She was constantly looking for improvements and ways to get the good deal, as Dave said, and take the profit that she had and invest it. She didn't just take her profits and spend it. She planted fruitful vines in her vineyard so that she invested it. She sowed it into something that would help them even more. And I don't know that it's wrong. I don't think it's wrong to spend a little bit on yourself, but if you're not investing some of your profits in something to help you continue to grow in profits, then you're not using your money as wisely as you could. Verse 17. Oh, are there any comments before I go on?
Well, when you look at these scriptures and you compare today with women today, the difference between working outside the house is that they're not working for themselves. They're working for someone else.
Right.
But back then, 100 years ago, or in the Bible here, they're working for themselves. They're their own boss.
Mm-hmm.
And now today it's like people are told different, or educated differently. You don't need to get married. You don't need a family. You don't need a a business of your own. You don't need it's totally different. So this idea of women working out of the house, or women should stay at home, that's a whole nother thing where that was totally different too.
Yeah. Well, I know the enemy likes to take God's plan and twist it around and get us confused. And, the woman and the man are a team. So whatever it takes to make the household work. And, I think there's a difference between working together as a team to get the job done and having a career. I mean, I'm not saying having a career is wrong, but if your family is neglected, it's not right. You need to have something that is beneficial all the way around, not just financially for the family. Okay. Verse 17. Jesse, did you have anything to add to that? Okay. Verse 17, she equips herself with strength. She takes care of herself, spiritually, mentally, physical fitness for her God-given task, and makes her arms strong. I have known people who have been in the ministry, full-time ministry, and they put so much into it that they neglected themselves. I've also seen mothers who took such good care of their family in many ways, but they forgot to take good care of the family's mother. And without the mother, they wouldn't have all that care. So it's important that she keeps herself healthy enough to where she can do what's needed for her to do as a good team player. I thought that was pretty good. I know sometimes in the past when I was a young mother, I put kids first, and I did everything for them, and I left myself out a lot. And it did affect my health some, but I thought I was being a good martyr, putting my kids first. Well, that's kind of a twisted notion on it that Satan had put in my head, because I needed to take care of myself so that I could take care of them. And so I didn't understand that for some reason, and I didn't always follow that. Verse 18, she sees that her gain is good. Her lamp does not go out, but it burns continually throughout the night. She's prepared for whatever lies ahead. And to me, that doesn't mean she never gets any sleep. That means she's available to her family and her family's needs 24/7. Now, I don't know if you all get a different interpretation of that on verse 18. If you do, speak up. But she's not lazy, but at the same time, she's available.
She's not unprepared.
Right. She's prepared. She's available. I mean, who usually gets up in the middle of the night if a child is sick? There are exceptions, but many times it's the mother who gets up and takes care of kids when they're sick in the middle of the night. That means she didn't get as much sleep as she wanted. She got disturbed. And there was another comment a while ago that I was going to make on one of these verses, and I don't... it said when she was talking about she looks to wool and flax and works with willing hands in delight. I think that's pretty neat that that's in there, because she has a good attitude. You don't hear her complaining about the work that she's doing. She delights in doing things for her family and her household and her husband and her business, and the things that God has entrusted her with. She enjoys doing it, and delights in it. She's not a grumbly person. She's got a good attitude.
I like Pastor Chuck's version of talking about husbands love your wives,
Mm-hmm.
and doesn't say anything in the Bible to tell the woman to love her husband. It's all about the husband to love his wife. And so if the husband treats the wife right, then the wife is going to respond to that. And so that's what makes the marriage. This idea that the world says, oh, you need to have a good argument every once in a while. It kind of brings you together, and all this mumbo jumbo. And so when she's doing everything, it tells you that she knows that her husband loves her.
Yes.
Anybody else who complains and this and that and whatever, there's no love there.
No. Not only does she love him, but she evidently trusts him, and he evidently trusts her. I mean, she's got the freedom to go places and buy land and do, buy vines and vineyards, and so, and he, it's not like she's a slave and he's telling her what all to do. He lets her use her mind and her talents, but they work together as a team and cooperate with each other, don't they? All right, verse 19. Excuse me. That fan on that overhead, I've got to find a way to run the overhead without the air getting down my throat. It's got me going more so than normal. She stretches out her hands to the distaff. Now, I looked up distaff because maybe you knew what it was, but I didn't. It's a spindle on which wool or flax is wound for spinning. So, and her hands hold the spindle as she spins woolen to thread for clothing. So she's very industrious, very hardworking and diligent. Okay, now here's something that goes along with the advice from Lemuel's mother about administering justice for the afflicted and needy, and defending the rights of those who are defenseless. Verse 20, she opens and extends her hand to the poor, and she reaches out her filled hands to the needy. She's compassionate. She's not greedy. She's generous, but not to a fault of where, she doesn't give everything away and her family suffers. She's balanced. She gives to help others as needed, but she also takes care of her family. Verse 21, she does not fear the snow for her household, for all in her household are clothed in expensive scarlet and wool. That makes me think of the ants. They have this knowing that God put in them what they need to do to provide for their ant colony, and they do it. She doesn't have to be fearful of winter coming, because ahead of time she plans ahead, and she makes sure whatever is going to be needed is available when it's needed. Verse 22, she makes for herself coverlets, cushions, and rugs of tapestry. Her clothing is linen, pure and fine, and purple. So she makes sure her family is clothed well. She makes sure her house looks nice. I'm sure she makes sure it's clean. It's good quality. It's not just thrown together rags. Anybody have anything to add to that so far?
Yeah, today we just have Chinese clothes made in China.
Made in China. Well, it is what it is.
People are going to have to get back to making stuff in America.
Well, there are a few things that are still made in America, but yeah, we need to have more American things. I think we'll do better as a country if we support ourselves by making things for ourselves. Got a point there.
If we're allowed to.
Well, verse 23 says, her husband is known in the city gates when he sits among the elders of the land. So he is respected and he has a good reputation, and his wife contributes to that. She has a good has a good reputation, and it contributes to his because the two have been joined together as one. So he reflects on her and she reflects on him. She makes fine linen garments and sells them and supplies sashes to the merchants. 25. Strength and dignity are her clothing, and her position is strong and secure, and she smiles at the future, knowing that she and her family are prepared. So, to me, that kind of says she doesn't expect her husband to go out and buy her everything because she helps with it all. She does her fair part. And she's confident. And you know, when you accomplish stuff that's good for you to accomplish, it makes you feel good about yourself and confident about yourself. And I'm not meaning in a bragging way. I mean, you have a knowing that you did well, and you're glad you did well. It gives you a gladness. Verse 26 says, she opens her mouth in skillful and godly wisdom, and the teaching of kindness is on her tongue, giving counsel and instruction. She has a good attitude. She has patience. She's confident. I'm pretty sure that if you were to check her out, you would find out that she has all the fruits of the Spirit. Love or charity, joy, peace, patience with long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, self-control, and temperance. That's from Galatians 5:22. Okay. Here's a little note from somebody else. They said, when the law of kindness is on your tongue, not only will the people around you benefit, you will also feel better about yourself and be more able to enjoy your life. When you speak kind to people, it's a little harder for them to be unkind back. I won't say it doesn't happen, but
Yeah, you don't, when you don't get involved with people's frivolous arguments, then later on they don't have anything to say about you. They can't mention your name because you didn't say anything.
that's
You
right.
know?
Takes two to argue, doesn't it?
Yeah, they can't use you in whatever they're talking about.
verse 27, she looks well to how things go in her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. In previous verses in Proverbs, we discussed knowing the state of your flocks. She does that. She knows the state of her household. She's aware. She hasn't been sleeping. She's aware of what's going on, and so therefore she makes sure that what's going on is good stuff, not bad stuff. And she's busy, and she doesn't just tell other people what to do. She gets in there and works right with them. Okay, any other comments? Okay, verse 28, her children rise up and call her blessed, happy, prosperous, to be admired. Her husband also, and he praises her, saying, in verse 29, many daughters have done nobly and well with the strength of character that is steadfast in goodness, but you excel them all. So her husband says good things about her because she's worthy of having those good things said about her. She's a good woman. We don't have to brag on ourselves when we're doing things that are right. Other people will brag on us. They'll say, "Oh, that person is," and that's much better than anything we could say about ourselves.
Yeah, when two people know each other, no one else can come along and say anything bad about them because they know each other, and everybody else that wants to say something that's not true or whatever, it won't work to try to divide them or whatever people outside of their marriage, or whatever their agenda is. They can't come in between them two and divide them or do anything because a husband and wife know each other, and everybody out on the outside, they just don't know.
That's true. That's a good lesson in when you hear somebody saying something bad about somebody else. I wonder how much they really know. They usually don't know as much as they're trying to make us think that they do. And it also goes along with our identity in Christ. When you know who you are in Christ and you know to the best of your ability you're doing things God's way, then when people try to come and put you down and cut you down and say negative things about you or to you, it's not going to tear you down like it would if you didn't know who you were in Christ. Because God knows. He sees everything. And so they can believe whatever they want to. God and you know the truth about the matter. Okay. And of course, the things that we've read also show that it doesn't really talk about whether this woman is ugly or pretty on the outside. She's very beautiful on the inside, and that outshines anything that's on the outside. And if she's already pretty on the outside, it makes her look prettier. And I have seen people who were self-conscious about how overweight they were, but they would still dress nice and becoming to them. And those kind of people, if they're overweight, it doesn't draw your attention to them being overweight so much because they're still doing the best they can with what they've got. and anyway, doing the most that they can with what they've got, and I think that's to be commendable. All right, verse 30 says, "Charm and grace are deceptive, and superficial beauty is vain. But a woman who fears or respects the Lord, reverently worshiping, obeying, serving, and trusting him with awe-filled respect, she shall be praised." And then verse 31 says, "Give her of the product of her hands, and let her own works praise her in the gates of the city." See, she doesn't have to brag on herself. She's doing that which is right in the sight of the Lord. She's doing what is right for her husband and her household, her business, anything else that she has, she does what's right. And as a result, whatever praise comes her way is good praise. It's good things are said about her, because they can't find any bad things, I imagine, without making them up. So, that is really all I have on Proverbs 31, unless somebody has something else they want to contribute. I sure would like to meet this woman. Get some wisdom off of her as to how to make all this happen. She's good at orchestrating a lot. She accomplishes a lot during the day. So,
Well, if you meet somebody who is wanting to do God's ways, who is seeking his ways, his plan, his purpose, his will in their life and for their family, I mean, God's going to honor that. And so, I mean, it's one thing to have God bless you with someone who is a Christian or morally right and all that. But once you're married, he leaves you to go your way, or he doesn't try to tell you how to do it. He doesn't force you to do anything. He'll put two people together, but then it's up to them to carry on with that relationship, because it takes two willing people who want to do God's ways, to do it his way, to go in that same direction. And so God might start out by helping people, but then it's up to them to carry it on, to continue it. So he can bless you, and then it's up to you to keep it going, and then he'll bless you as you go along. So what am I saying?
That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
You might want to speak in the microphone.
Well, I looked up what a virtuous woman is. It says something about a virtuous woman is a crown to her husband. Then I looked up this verse, but she that maketh ashamed is his rottenness in his bones. So it's got a verse down there, 1 Corinthians 11:7. I looked that up, and it said that she's a veil. She covers him. And so that would be the veil is a crown which covers him. And that, I guess, if it covers him, it means protection too, I think. And so
In
more
many
of a
ways.
protection in different ways. Probably adds to, whatever she's doing for him. Strengthens the whole, um, both of them. It strengthens them.
I think of Grace Parson. You know, Gary's colorblind, and so she told me one time, she said, I usually pick out his clothes. Now, if I'm out of town for some reason, or I'm sick and I'm not available to pick out his clothes, it's hard telling what he'll look like. But she tried to make sure he looked good, and he cooperated with her because he couldn't tell if the colors he put on matched or not. And I remember seeing him a couple of times when she wasn't available to pick out his clothes, and there was a lot to be desired. He did best he could with what he had. His colors didn't go together very well.
Yeah.
So that kind of reminds me of the virtuous woman, because she makes sure that there's good clothes for her husband to wear, and it's not just garments we're talking about. She makes sure his garments, that he's clean and stuff. He has a certain responsibility himself to take his own shower and stuff.
Yeah.
But she makes sure that the clothes are clean that he has to choose from, and make sure that things are done properly and in order so that he looks respectable. So I just I'm sure if I stopped and dwelt and thought on it a little longer, or if any of us did, we'd think of other avenues to go with that that have nothing to do with what we put on our bodies. But anyway, I just, if she lived nowadays, his hair was looking unkept, she'd probably send him to Josie.
And two, it gives another verse, 1 Corinthians 11:7, which you'd think that now it switches over to maybe the covering, which would be really actually from the Lord, too.
It's a righteous
or
thing.
starts with the Lord. And it says, for if the woman, 7, for a man indeed ought not to cover his own head. See, he's not supposed to cover his own head. So it might be talking about the woman as the church, too. So there's so much facets here.
That's right.
Yeah.
If you get to thinking, you could probably... I had never thought of it that way, Josie. But that's...
And it says, for as
I can
much
see that.
as he is the image and glory of God, but the woman is the glory of the man. And it says, has his head veiled. Let's see. But it does talk about, hold on a minute. Okay.
Where'd you say that was? 1 Corinthians?
Yeah, 1 Corinthians 11:7 is that one. Well, anyway.
Yeah, and I
For the
see where
man.
you're coming from. Actually, in verse 7, he's the image and reflected glory of God, so there's no really need for him to have his head covered. But the woman is the expression of man's glory. So they're still tightly woven in there, and it could,
Yeah.
regardless of how you word it, the woman can add to the man, or she can take away from the man, depending on her attitude, her behavior, her industriousness, her morals, her whatever. And so it's like a covering. It's like a crown when she does her part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I went to the wrong one, but I don't know where I was before. I was trying to get it all.
Yeah. Either way you look at it, a man can be accelerated. Would that be a good word? Made better by a good wife,
Yeah.
or he can be brought down and torn apart by a bad wife. And a wife that is not good can really cause, it mentions in Proverbs, I believe it is, about, made me think of a faucet dripping, that'd be better than being in a household with or being in a household with a woman, a contentious woman.
Yeah.
Is worse than a dripping faucet or something to that effect. I don't have it right here, but that makes me know that a cooperative woman who adds to her husband is the complete opposite of this contentious woman. The contentious woman is always not cooperating with her husband, not trying to make him look better. She's all about doing what she wants to do, and some of what she wants to do might be good, but the way she's going about it isn't. And I know what I want to say, but I'm not expressing it very well. But anyway, yeah. And then there's another place that talks about it'd be better to be single than to be married to a woman who's kind of along that line, and it had a special name for it, but I can't remember what it was. So, well, do y'all have any more comments? Those are really great comments. I just it brings out. I know when we do this, it brings out things that I had never thought of, and I think that's awesome. It gets us to thinking. And Josie, you and Dave both have brought out some angles I hadn't thought of.
Well, without marriage, a country does not last. Because a prosperous country is based on families. If you take away the family, then you bring it down, because the support of the whole country is based on people working together, and they're made up of families. But if you just take that away and destroy the family unit, and you take away the identity of a husband, a wife, boys, girls, and then you do away with that way of thinking about each other, and you come along with this neutral gender nonsense.
Oh, no. Yeah.
You destroy a country. And then, of course, God's not involved when you do that. And then each generation just slips away, and then you have a bunch of robots following orders, and that's the way it goes. Until someone stands up and says, "Hey, wait a minute. What happened to our roots? Our heritage in God, in Christ, at the beginning of this country.
And I've heard this too, that if a woman is virtuous, and if she is married to an unbeliever, that she covers him with her prayers and until he reels in, I guess. And a lot of times they do, but sometimes they don't.
Her influence can have an impact on him. And there is scripture in the New Testament that talks about the two that are unequally yoked. And it gives me the idea that I don't know whether they were unequally yoked at the beginning or whether it happened because one became a believer after they got married.
Right.
But and because I don't have the scriptures in front of me to clarify that, but it mentions that she should not divorce him if he chooses to live with her, because she could have a good influence on him that would make all the difference.
Goes the other way too, that if he becomes a believer, his woman, the church, is his covering until he knows really what he's doing, else. I
Yeah.
mean, they're like babies, I guess, in that sense.
Yeah.
They don't know yet what they need to know. And so the church can be a covering for that unbeliever. Or, well, for the baby coming in, which is maybe a man or woman, either one.
Right, for the baby Christian that has.
So, I mean, there's just a lot to that.
Yeah. I've heard several different preachers, including Chuck, that could take some of those facets, as you call them, and teach on them, and I just was always amazed at
How much you can get out of it.
it's like
it all comes down to one thing. Christ, is our
Right.
covering,
that's right.
whether we're man or woman.
Yeah.
That's if we look toward him.
That's right. That is so true. Anybody else got anything else to say, or are we?
No, I guess I've said it all.
All right. Well, let's do prayer requests. Anybody's got a prayer request?
I do.